Hello and welcome to CVR News Network. You're watching CVR English and this is World 360 with me, Sandeep. The details are as President Donald Trump stated that if his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin goes well, he would consider holding a follow-up meeting with both Putin and Zelensky. UK officials have largely accepted that Zelensky will not participate in the Friday summit, but are confident that Trump has been persuaded not to finalize any agreements during what he describes as the feel-out meeting. Trump has also promised to brief Zelensky immediately after his meeting with Putin. Meanwhile, Britain is preparing new sanctions on Russia, which could be imposed if Trump concludes that Putin is not serious about striking a deal. The outcome of these talks is being closely monitored by international officials.
The leaders and President Zelensky. I'm going to call President Zelensky, and then I'll call, probably in that order, the leaders. There's a very good chance that we're going to have a second meeting, which will be more productive than the first, because the first is I'm going to find out where we are and what we're doing. Again, this is Biden's war. This isn't my war. He got us into this thing. And it should have never happened. This war would have never happened if I were president. But it is what it is, and I'm here to fix it, and I'm here to stop 6,000, 7,000 people last week. 7,213 people last week were killed, mostly soldiers. But missiles being lobbed into towns don't exactly help either, but mostly soldiers. And Ukrainian and Russian, they're not American soldiers, but if we can save a lot of lives, it would be a great thing. I've stopped 5 wars in the last 6 months. And on top of that, we wiped out the nuclear capability of Iran, obliterated it. It's turned out to be a correct word, by the way, because some of the press said, well, maybe it wasn't obliteration. It was obliteration. And we're going to meet with, I would say, the second meeting. If the first one goes okay, we'll have a quick second one. I would like to do it almost immediately. And we'll have a quick second meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky and myself, if they'd like to have me there. And that would be a meeting where maybe it could be absolutely work. But the first meeting will not work that out. Certain great things can be gained in the first. It's going to be a very important meeting. But it's setting the table for the second meeting. I think the second meeting, if the second meeting takes place. Now, there may be no second meeting, because if I feel that the leaders and President Zelensky, I'm going to call President Zelensky, and then I'll call, probably in that order, the leaders. There's a very good chance that we're going to have a second meeting.
US Vice President J.D. Vance has stated that it is President Donald Trump's mission to bring peace to Europe once again. Vance emphasized that Trump's leadership is focused on restoring stability and diplomatic relations in the region. In his remarks, Vice President highlighted the importance of Trump's foreign policy strategies, which are aimed at reducing conflicts and promoting unity across Europe. Wang expressed confidence in Trump's ability to navigate international relations and foster peaceful resolutions to ongoing tensions. He further stated that under Trump's guidance, the U.S. would continue to play a crucial role in securing peace on the global stage. The Vice President's statement comes at a time of raising geopolitical challenges in Europe. Wang's comments reflect the administration's broader foreign policy goals. The Trump administration has been focused on strengthening alliances while addressing emerging global threats.
And if you look at the long sweep of history, every time something big happens for the world, every time a great victory is won for freedom and for peace and for prosperity, it is almost always the Brits and the Americans that do it together. And we win every single time we go to war together. You guys know that as well as anybody. I started the week in a place called Chevening with the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, further south in the country, in a county called Kent. And what we did is we worked on one of our most important shared security goals in Europe, which is the end of the war between Russia and Ukraine. The President of the United States came in 6 months ago, and I just talked to him right before I came on the stage, and he said very simply that we are going to make it our mission as an administration to bring peace to Europe once again. But as you all know, it is impossible to bring peace anywhere unless the bad guys are also worried that we've got a hell of a fine Air Force and a hell of a fine military to back up the peace to begin with. And if you look at the long sweep of history, every time something big happens for the the world every time a great victory is won for freedom and for peace and for prosperity, it is almost always the Brits and the Americans that do it together, and we win every single time we go to war together. You guys know that as well as anybody. I started the week in a place called Chevening with the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom further south in the country in a county called Kent. And what we did is we worked on one of our most important shared security goals in Europe, which is the end of the war between Russia and Ukraine. The President of the United States came in 6 months ago, and I just talked to him right before I came on the stage, and he said very simply that we are going to make it our mission as an administration to bring peace to Europe once again. But as you all know, it is impossible to bring peace anywhere unless the bad guys are also worried that we've got a hell of a fine Air Force and a hell of a fine military to back up the peace to begin with. And if you look at the long sweep of history, every time something big happens for the world, every time a great victory is won for freedom and for peace and for prosperity, it is almost always the Brits and the Americans that do it together, and we win every single time we go to war together. You guys know that as well as anybody. I started the
Sir Keir Starmer, the leader of UK Labour Party, stated that the coalition of willing countries is ready to implement military plans to support Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire in its ongoing war with Russia. Starmer emphasized the importance of a negotiated peace while also ensuring that Ukraine receives the necessary support to defend itself. The coalition of the countries involved has been preparing these military strategies as a part of broader plan to aid Ukraine during this crucial phase. The Labour leader's comments come as diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the conflict continue. Starmer also called for united international response to ensure Russia's actions are met with consistent pressure. His remarks highlight the growing urgency for a peaceful resolution while maintaining Ukraine's sovereignty. The situation remains tense, with global leaders closely monitoring developments in the region.
Today, a very important call with President Trump earlier on in relation to security guarantees, as Emmanuel has just set out, and as we've said all along, we, the coalition, stepping up, showing what we will do, the plans we've put forward, credible military plans, and alongside that, the backing of the US. So we stand ready as a coalition to support the meeting on Friday and everything that I hope can flow out of it. Nothing is obviously guaranteed, and as Emmanuel has said and Friedrich has said, the President has agreed to debrief immediately afterwards so that we know what the next steps will be. But we're ready to support this, including through the plans that we've already drawn up to deploy a reassurance force once hostilities have ceased. Firstly, and obviously, there can be no negotiations about Ukraine without Ukraine. And that's been a long-standing principle of this group. And I know Volodymyr is on the call and will be absolutely clear in relation to that. And along with that, that international borders cannot be and must not be changed by force. And again, that's a long-standing principle of this group. And alongside that, that any talk about borders, diplomacy, ceasefire has to sit alongside a robust and credible security guarantee to ensure that any peace, if there is peace, is lasting peace, and that Ukraine can defend its territorial integrity as part of any deal. And that's why this group was set up. That's why it's important we've all made the commitments that we have. It is important to remind colleagues that we do stand ready also to increase pressure on Russia, particularly the economy. Today, a very important call with President Trump earlier on in relation to security guarantees, as Emmanuel has just set out, and as we've said all along, we, the coalition, stepping up, showing what we will do, the plans we've put forward, credible military plans, and alongside that, the backing of the US. So we stand ready as a coalition to support the meeting on Friday and everything that I hope can flow out of it. Nothing is obviously guaranteed, and as Emmanuel has said, and Friedrich has said,
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO summit in Tianjin, China from August 31st to September 1st, marking his first visit to China since 2018. The summit is expected to host leaders from over 20 countries and 10 international organizations focusing on regional security and cooperation. Ahead of the summit, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit India on August 18th for high-level talks with National Security Advisor Ajit Doval under the Special Representatives Mechanism. The discussions aim to address ongoing border tensions and signal a thaw in India-China relations.
The Special Representatives with the NSA Ajit Doval, in which the two will discuss boundary dispute along the line of actual control. This will be also the first high-level visit from China's side after India-Pakistan hostilities following Operation Sindoor by India. The development that has come at a time when India and China have taken a series of steps to improve their relationship in recent months. Later this month, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will also visit China to attend the SCO summit, which will be the first such visit since the 2020 clash between India and China, after which the ties nosedived following the Galwan Valley clash, in which 20 Indian soldiers were martyred. India and China have long been working to resolve the military standoff in eastern Ladakh. Earlier this year, China even resumed Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, and India resumed giving visas to Chinese tourists. And in the latest move to boost trade, tourism and even economic ties, India and China are all set to resume direct passenger flights. It's also significant to note here that India-China engagements come amid the ongoing India-US standoff over a trade deal. India is all set to engage with both Russia and China over the next 2 weeks. While Wang Yi is visiting New Delhi the next week, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is scheduled to visit Moscow for the special representative level talks with the NSA Ajit Doval, in which the two will discuss boundary dispute along the line of actual control. This will be also the first high.
The Orthodox Church in America has organized 3 days of prayer for peace at its church across Alaska in anticipation of the upcoming summit between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The prayer sessions are being held this week with the aim of fostering peace and understanding ahead of their meeting in Anchorage. The summit scheduled for later this week is seen as a crucial moment for international relations, especially given the ongoing tensions between the US and Russia. Faithful in Alaska are coming together to seek divine intervention for a peaceful resolution to the complex geopolitical challenges. The prayers are also a sign of solidarity with the global call for diplomatic dialogue. The event has drawn attention from both local and international communities, reflecting the significance of the summit. Orthodox Church leaders have emphasized the importance of peace and unity in these turbulent times.
We hope for sustained peace, hope for a ceasefire, we hope for an exchange of captives, we hope for the rebuilding of part of a world that's really been broken by war, by tragedy, by death, and by, of course, deep resentment and hatred and anger. This is really a 3-day ascent of prayer, which begins with a church service really dedicated to St. Olga of Huithluk, and she was known to be really a healer in families. And because of the great pain and hardship that is experienced by families in Ukraine and also in Russia, it felt good to start there, that there would be healing there. With the leaders coming to Alaska, what is the one thing that the church can offer? And that is prayers for peace. We hope for sustained peace, hope for a ceasefire, we hope for an exchange of captives, we hope for the rebuilding of part of a world that's really been broken by war, by tragedy, by death, and by, of course, deep resentment and hatred and anger. This is really a 3-day ascent of prayer, which begins with a church service really dedicated to Saint Olga of Kwiatluk, and she was known to be really a healer in families. And because of the great pain and hardship that is experienced by families in the Ukraine and also in Russia, it felt good to start there, that there would be healing there. With the leaders coming to Alaska, what is the one thing that the church can offer? And that is prayers for peace. We hope for
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Berlin for urgent talks ahead of the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska. Merz convened virtual meeting with European leaders and US President Donald Trump to ensure Ukraine's voice is heard. Zelensky rejected Trump's suggestion of territorial concessions, calling them unconstitutional. Kiev and EU allies for being sidelined in peace talks that could favor Russia's. Zelensky warned Putin is bluffing about the peace and urged stronger sanctions if Moscow refuses a ceasefire. Trump hinted at a follow-on summit with Zelensky and Putin if Friday's talks show progress.
Путін блефує, він старається натиснути перед зустрічю на Алясці, на всіх напрямках українського фронту. Росія намагається зобразити, що спроможна окупувати всю Україну. Безумовно, це їх бажання. Так, це правда, у Росії в кілька разів більше зброї, зокрема артилерії в 3 рази і подібного, але також у Росії в 3 рази більше втрат. І це факт. Я сказав колегам і президенту Сполучених Штатів Америки, і європейським друзям, що Путін точно не хоче миру, він хоче окупації нашої держави, і ми всі це дійсно розуміємо. Путін блефує, він старається натиснути перед зустрічю на Алясці, на всіх напрямках українського фронту. Росія намагається зобразити, що спроможна окупувати всю Україну. Безумовно, це їх бажання. Так, це правда, у Росії в кілька разів більше зброї, зокрема артилерії в 3 рази і подібного, але також у Росії в 3 рази більше втрат. І це факт. Я сказав колегам і президенту Сполучених Штатів Америки, і європейським друзям, що Путін...
Peru's President Dina Boluarte signed a contentious amnesty bill into law shielding military personnel, police officers and self-defense groups from prosecution for alleged human rights abuses committed during the country's internal armed conflict between 1980 to 2000. The law applies to those under investigation, accused or convicted, including individuals over 70. Human rights organizations and international bodies have condemned the move, warning it undermines justice for victims of torture, disappearances, and extrajudicial killings. Boluarte defended the law as honoring those who fought terrorism, while critics argue it violates Peru's international obligations and erases accountability for past atrocities.
Es una muestra además de desprecio a las víctimas, es una muestra de desprecio para que las víctimas no alcancen justicia, olvidando que las víctimas de esta ley espuria son las familias más pobres de este país. Muchas de ellas comunidades campesinas, muchas de ellas persiguiendo más de 20 años justicia, y eso es lo que ha hecho hoy día Dina Boluarte, burlarse de ese derecho esencial que tiene cualquier persona en el país a acceder a justicia.
Con ese alto honor, hoy voy a firmar esta ley. Hoy, con la promulgación de esta ley de amnistía, el gobierno peruano y el Congreso de la República reconocen a los miembros de nuestras Fuerzas Armadas, de nuestra Policía Nacional del Perú y de los comités de autodefensa que participaron en la lucha contra el terrorismo. Reconocemos su sacrificio y les devolvemos la dignidad que nunca debió ser cuestionada.
¡Y la asesina! ¡El pueblo te repudia! Es una muestra además de desprecio a las víctimas, es una muestra de desprecio para que las víctimas.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met British Prime Minister Keir Starmer at 10 Downing Street ahead of pivotal US-Russia summit in Alaska, from which Ukraine and its European allies have been excluded. The summit involving President Trump and Putin is expected to address a potential ceasefire in Ukraine's war, sparking concerns over Kiev's absence. Reports suggest controversial West Bank-style occupation model may be discussed. Starmers reaffirmed that UK's support for Ukraine, emphasizing that borders must not be changed by force. Zelensky's visit highlights fears that Ukraine could be sidelined in negotiations that may impact its territorial sovereignty. US Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is mobilizing BRICS leaders, including India's Narendra Modi and China's Xi Jinping, for a unified response to steep US tariffs of up to 50% on Brazilian exports. Lula has dismissed direct engagement with President Trump, citing a lack of willingness to negotiate, and instead unveiled a $5.5 billion sovereign Brazil relief plan to support affected exporters. He is urging BRICS nations to defend multilateralism and explore alternatives to the US dollar, including a shared trade currency. China and India have signaled support, with Xi calling BRICS a platform for unity and self-reliance.
Media videos, Lula stressed that the idea is not to undermine the dollar, but to test an alternative for trade among BRICS nations as well. In his remarks that come amid heightened tensions with Washington, D.C. It was in January that President Donald Trump even warned of 100% tariffs on BRICS members if they move forward with such a currency. In fact, just last month, Trump even added an extra 10% tariff on any nation aligning with what he calls anti-American policies of BRICS. The latest flashpoint comes when Washington has already announced a 50% tariff on Brazilian goods, the hike that affects a broad range of products but exempts civil aircraft and parts, aluminium, wood, pulp, energy products, among others. Lula da Silva has also called the decision the most regrettable moment in Brazil-US relations and announced that Brazil will seek recourse through the World Trade Organization and other diplomatic platforms. Lula has ruled out direct talks with Trump for now, instead prioritizing outreach to BRICS partners like India and China. He also said that Brazil wants independence in its trade policy, which includes the option to trade in national currencies without the US dollar. While Trump has publicly said that Lula can call him anytime, Brazilian officials maintain that any engagement must follow diplomatic channels. Finance Minister Fernando has described Trump's latest comments as constructive but stressed that formal process will guide any talks. Lula has also confirmed that Trump will be invited to COP13 in Brazil later this year. That would signal that despite sharp economic disputes, diplomatic doors still remain open. Media videos, Lula stressed that the idea is not to undermine the dollar, but to
Gaza's humanitarian crisis has worsened as a brutal heat wave grips the region, leaving thousands of displaced people in tents struggling for clean water and relief. Temperatures soaring above 40 degrees have intensified dehydration and heat-related illness, with limited access to water and electricity compounding to the suffering. The crisis escalated as Israel announced its plans to retake Gaza City, sparking fears for Palestinian civilians and hostages still held by Hamas. International pressure is mounting, with 24 countries urging Israel to allow unrestricted aid access, warning that famine is unfolding and immediate action is needed to prevent further catastrophe.
الجو حامي جدا، يعني البني ادم اذا كان بيشرب لتر ميه صار بده 87 لتر ميه، والمي مش متوفره، وهذه مصيبتنا يعني احنا كشعب نازحين.
بنشربه بنعاني بنضلنا ننغص مش عارفين ايش مصدرها بس هي اللي بنلاقيه بوجهنا يعني لانه احنا في الخيم انت عارف الدنيا احنا بشهر 8 هذا شهر اب هذا شهر نار ومش عارفين نطلع من الخيم نار وبنرجع لها زي النار بنضطر نشرب المي هاد وين ما نروح.
الجو حامي جدا يعني البني ادم اذا كان بيشرب لتر ميه صار بده 87 لتر ميه والمي مش متوفره وهذه مصيبتنا يعني احنا كشعب نازحين.
بنشربه بنعاني بنضلنا ننغص مش عارفين ايش مصدرها بس هي اللي بنلاقيه بوجهنا يعني لانه احنا في الخيم انت عارف الدنيا احنا بشهر 8 هذا شهر اب هذا شهر نار ومش عارفين نطلع من الخيم نار وبنرجع لها زي النار بنضطر نشرب المي هاد وين ما نروح.
الجو حامي جدا يعني البني ادم اذا كان بيشرب لتر ميه صار بده 87 لتر ميه والمي مش متوفره وهذه مصيبتنا يعني احنا كشعب نازحين.
بنشربه بنعاني بنضلنا ننغص مش عارفين ايش مصدرها بس هي اللي بنلاقيه بوجهنا يعني لانه احنا في الخيم انت عارف الدنيا احنا بشهر 8 هذا شهر اب هذا شهر نار ومش عارفين نطلع من الخيم نار وبنرجع لها زي النار بنضطر نشرب المي هاد.
Southern Europe is battling deadly wildfires fueled by intense heat wave, with Greece, Spain, Turkey and Albania among the hardest hit. At least 3 people have died and thousands have been evacuated as flames engulf homes, forest and farmland. Greece's port city of Patras saw relentless firefighting efforts, while Albania reported explosions from buried World War II era shells. Over 440,000 hectares have burned, more than double the 20-year average, highlighting the worsening impact of human-induced climate change. Scientists warn Europe is warming nearly twice the global rate, making extreme weather and wildfires increasingly frequent. Tropical storm Podul lashed Hong Kong, triggering the city's hardest level black rainstorm warning as torrential rain flooded streets and disrupted services. The Hong Kong Observatory later downgraded the alert to red and then amber as rainfall eased. Podul, which weakened from a typhoon after hitting Taiwan, brought over 200 mm of rain to parts of the city, prompting school closures, flight cancellations and delays to court proceedings. Authorities warned a landslide risks and flash floods, especially in low-lying areas, while showers were expected to continue due to the storm's outer rain bands.
Boats were seen taking refuge in storm shelters and pedestrians caught in downpours trying to push through the wind and the water. Now, authorities have issued an amber rain warning in Hong Kong after cancelling the previously issued black rainstorm warning, which is the highest level in the 3-tier system. Medical authorities have shut out operation clinics across Hong Kong for the day, with the exception of emergency departments. Hong Kong Post 2 suspended operations due to the heavy rain, 50 millimeters of rainfall in just 24 hours. Power outages were also reported across Xiamen, with emergency teams dispatching over 600.
And that's the